Hey guys, this is Faster U4 brought to you by FitLab, Tailwind Nutrition, Biomaxa and Capital Cycles. If you're a cyclist, you want to go faster? Then let's giddy up. Hey guys, welcome to Faster U4. Brought to you by FitLab, Tailwind Nutrition, Biomaxa and Capital Cycles. So, 2 races on the weekend. Pretty important one. This was the Wellington Centre Champs, which was a road race on Saturday and a time trial on Sunday. I managed to pull off a gold medal in the Master 2 category on both days. Happy with that. It was my mission for the day. I'll talk a little bit about what I learnt in those races. A little bit wider philosophically about what I learned and what other people, some of my coached riders learned. When I should have tried to pull together these notions in my mind, I try to think about not only my experience, but the experience I hear when I'm talking to my riders, and what you can do to reflect on what you did in a race, and then obviously improve on that for next time around. So I'll tell you what that was this weekend. And I'll tell you about what's coming up next weekend, which is the PNP Summer Series race number 4 and the Wellington Masters Cycling Club Road Race Champs. And all of the races happening this time of year, happening on around about the same, very similar circuits, same part of Wairarapa. And that's important for the age group nationals, which are being run on sort of the same circuit. So let's have a look at race number 1 on Saturday. This was the Centre Champs Road Race. So we had some, I don't know, they look like pretty good fields to me. The field I was in, starting at 9:45, was a little bit different because it contained Master 2, which is me. It contained I think like the under 19 men and the senior men and the under 23 as well. So 4 or 5 different grades in there. And that's going to be important in a minute when I just talk about when you go to a race, what your plan is. It's important to know who you're racing against. So we'll just park that for a sec. So we had total time of 2.5 hours, distance of 96.2 k's. So, you know, that's pretty long for a club race. It's a sort of length where some guys find the endurance tough, and you can use that if you've got good endurance, because you know that they will start probably having some trouble in the final third of the race. If you know there's some guys in your group like that, watch them. They might be good at first, but they'll fade. Climbing 678 metres. Little slumpy chunks in the course. And the biggest climbers, Millers, which I've talked about a number of times, a medium length, medium grade climb that features a lot in races in this area. Work 2100 kilojoules, so about 9 McDonald's hamburgers consumed. All right, an average speed of 41 kilometers an hour. So we were not hanging around. Average power of 254 watts for a normalized of 307. It's not really super high. And actually, interestingly, my perception of the power in this race was that it was quite high, but the reality wasn't. And I think that's interesting. It's sort of like a sign that your form's coming down a bit. I think the reason that you have those legs, magic legs days, where you're putting out a lot of power but the effort isn't that high, it's when your form's good. It's good to have a power meter because you can actually determine what your true output is. It's one more benefit of having a power meter. And the story of the race really was, it was very aggressive from the outset with lots of young guys. Young guys like to attack off the front and have thoughts about staying away for a long time, and they're very, very strong oftentimes. So I'll just put my fan on here. So we're back. So you have younger riders often putting in very long range attacks, pretty much from very early in the race. And within reason, if there's only 1 or 2 guys up the road, and this feeling, the sensation of the bunch is reasonably motivated, that's not going to stay away. So I guess one thought about that is, I have this thing when I'm racing, which is feel the mood of the bunch, which sounds like a very subjective notion, but it isn't really. We all know days when we've been in the bunch and no one really chases anything and everyone's conserving, and it's not just long races where that happens. It can be to do with the quality of the field, and it can be to do with 100 different things, but ultimately, as a rider, try to, with experience comes a sort of the feeling from what's happening in the bunch, and you can use that to your advantage in the sense that if the bunch is very active, you don't need to do so much work on the front to bring back breakaways because the bunch is doing it. You can sort of be a little more conservative and sit back a little. Well, vice versa, if it's not active, 2 things. You will need to be active and go up the front and encourage people to chase if you want a breakaway to come back. Or number 2, you could be in that breakaway. So all I'd say is have a feel for that bunch mood. You can see about a quarter of the way into the race here, I went on a breakaway myself with Anthony Norder, who is in some breakaway mood at the moment. Look at this, 7 minutes and 7.25 minutes, or almost 8 minutes there, with an EP just knocking on 400 watts. So we went away, but didn't make it stick. The bunch was, as I say, too into it. It's a lot of just small attacks getting brought back for the first half of the race. Second half a little bit different. There was a very strong move near Gladstone with some very good riders in it, Ben Barry and Marty Hartley-Brown, I think. And someone back in the bunch when that went away did say, that's the race, guys. And I didn't know if that seemed like a long way to go, and the bunch was pretty motivated, but they were right. Long story short, about 5 guys got out to a lead of about 40 seconds. But it was an interesting poised situation because even though they did have a fairly good break going, some strong riders, they're pretty motivated. The bunch was also working very hard too. You guys like McDermott going at the front and really, really working. So we weren't hanging around. And if I look at the numbers for this sort of final third, even me, who wasn't doing massive amounts of work, still doing an EP of about 300 watts, close to. So, and that's working with everyone else, coming through, doing turns. Ultimately, we came into the small turn in Tiffin Road, where this particular race finished. A very long, straight, reasonably narrow sprinters lane coming into Tiffin Road there, and we did narrow the gap down about 5 to 10 seconds, but we couldn't quite close the gap on the 5 guys who were away. Ben Barry taking a really good sprint from the other guys. So congratulations to Ben winning the senior race. Coming, so there was 5 guys or so, and then I managed to have a pretty good sprint to take the bunch sprint. It was about 5th or 6th across the line or something like that, and also taking the Master 2 title as part of that. So one thing I'd just say about the sprint. So they talked about the mood of the bunch. The mood of or other people you're racing against as well is pretty important. So I said before that this was a race where there was multiple grades. So you need to decide really before the race starts what your goal is, and I talk to my riders about this all the time. And your goal isn't always going to be to go with every move, and it's not always going to be try to be first across the line, because you may not be the strongest rider there, but you still want to win your age grade. Point is, if that's your goal, you need to keep an eye on the other guys in your grade, not necessarily the group as a whole. It's quite different things. That was sort of my mode for this race, which was to really heavily mark guys like Tej Nutsvidman, Grant Perry, who are in my age group, not be so worried about other riders, especially the younger age groups going up the road. And that's sort of how it played out. There were times when both of those riders I mentioned, Tej and Grant, put in some really good attacks and were very active and strong, and they really rode really well actually. And I did have to mark them quite heavily. And then coming into the final sprint, that happened again where Tej was very strong, probably did a little much work, went to the front a bit too early, and when his legs ran out, I just took my opportunity. So some thoughts about the race and some thoughts about the mood of the bunch and the mood of different people you're racing against. I think that can really help, and it can really help anytime there's a, like any sort of mass start. No, that technically wasn't a mass start race on the weekend, but it kind of was a little bit like one in the sense that we had multiple grades. Coming up on Sunday, the Wellington Masters Club road race is a mass, well, it usually is a mass start. I'm sure it's a mass start this time too. So you can use that to know, what is my goal here? I did have a talk to one of my riders who made a giant mistake, which was to try to chase down in Master 3, that riders who stand head and shoulders above everyone in that category is Brendan McGrath and Dave Rowlands. And a rider I spoke to made a giant mistake, which was to go on the front of the bunch and haul those guys back when they went very early. The downside of that move is that he ended up taking the bunch back up to them, blowing himself up in the process and going backwards. Now, if you look at that, after, if you sort of analyze that as a move, you have to recognize that guys like Brendan and Dave are very talented, very strong, and they're going to win. They're going to win full stop. Barring some mishap, they're going to win. That's all there is to it. You are in the race for bronze. So let's be honest about that. And then work on that. So if you're a rider in that position, you don't want to be expending huge amounts of energy to make a move that's ultimately not going to make any difference to the race. It's a good learning thing there. And that's not to say that person was silly or, they made a mistake, but I make mistakes all the time. Everyone, experienced riders make mistakes all the time, and sit and think about it afterwards and learn from it. And if that all sounds too anal for you, then maybe road racing isn't for you. The interesting thing about it is that road racing especially, it's quite good when you're in your 40s sort of thing. The reason there's so many guys who are good in their 40s, 50s, even early 60s, is they have patience and they learn. And the reason you see sometimes young guys who do really well and then flake out is they have talent but not patience. They don't learn, they get frustrated. And that's a good thing about, same reason that old people like gardening. We have patience. And, old age and guile quite often, but not always, beat youth and enthusiasm. That's what I like about road racing these days. All right, good times. So, gold in the road race. Let's quickly talk about the time trial yesterday. show you some of my data here. Wasn't terribly happy about this, but I won. Moving time 35 minutes and 58 seconds or thereabouts. 25.3 kilometers. Flat course, but in the turn is lumpy. This is not the same course as is going to be used in the age group national champs. For some reason they couldn't use it. This course I think is actually harder. National champs course is much flatter. It does contain one or two kind of little climbs, but a lot of it is very smooth and flat and fast and good. This contained a lot more lumps. We had a work of 715 kilojoules, so about 2 McDonald's hamburgers burnt. Average speed of 42.2 kilometers an hour. Average power of 331 and a normalized of 336 watts. So bang, maybe 10 watts under my target power. And I think that's explainable by the fact that I'd raced the road race the day before. So some thoughts. Number one, they will be checking that your time trial bike complies to UCI measurements at the age grades, and they were here. Message being, if you don't know what that is, you don't want to just bring your bike along and then have to change it at the last minute, because that's going to mess up your position. So know in advance, change your bike if you need to, and get in some time in that position. Long story short, guys, most of the rules that are going to affect you affect the saddle nose and its relationship to the bottom bracket plane, the bar height, and the bar length. I won't go into what all that is now. Just Google UCI regulations on time trial bikes or something like that. There's a really good technical document available online. If you email me and you want it, I'll send it to you. And it explains all this in detail. One trick for young players is that the measurements on where it's referring to bar tips, the extensions, the bit where you're forward and you're holding onto with your hands, the length includes the shifter. So, in other words, if you have an old school mechanical shifter like I do, dangling on the end of the bar there, that is included in your length. If it's a DI2 button or something like that, well, obviously you don't have to worry about that. Message being, if your bike, like mine was, is measured up to the end of the tips of the extensions, not the shifter, you're going to have to change that by the size of the shifter. So it's a terrible way of explaining it, but I think you understand what I mean. Just bear in mind that for its total rotation, so your shifter goes, assuming you've got an old school mechanical shifter, most people do, it goes up and down, twirls around. For its full plane of motion, that's considered to be part of the bar height and the bar length. So, short story, you need to account for that when you're making your measurements. Don't do what I do. I turned up and I had to change my bars, which is fine. Bring them down a little bit, bring them back a little bit to account for that shifter. To tell you the truth, I thought I had accounted for that, but my measurements were obviously out by a centimetre or two, but that's fine. Lesson learned. As far as this TT goes, everything was pretty much in the sweet spot. There's not much to say. Maybe the only thing to say is, I think number one takeaway out of this is rhythm and upper body. So there's lots of times when, and probably this applies even more to the age groups course, it's flat, it's fast, not a lot of wind. And if you can really concentrate on relaxing your shoulders, relaxing your hands, and having an excellent 180, 360 degree pedal stroke. I noticed when I did that, those things, my power went up, 10, 20, even 30 watts. And it's sort of like is an instant. So what happens is you get into this mode where it's great. There's a big long flat bit of road. I'm just going to be able to hammer, get on top of the gear for a couple of minutes. Really remind yourself, write it on your stem if you have to, whatever it takes. Remind yourself that This is the time when you can get a good advantage. Relax. Put it in a, I like to do this thing where I'll put it into a gear that's just a tiny bit too big. Then I'll try to use those techniques, relaxing your hands and arms, act as more of a lactate sink, pedal in perfect circles, relax your back, and then you find that that gives you that extra 10 watts to get on top of that gear, and you can feel it. You can even look at your power meter and you can see your power coming up. It's quite a cool little move, so don't clench and really get on top of it, and you might find you can squeeze out a little bit more on those sections. I tried it on this race. I think it went pretty well. It was okay, so goal there. So let's look at quickly over the results. Let's pick out some riders, notable performances, all Fit Lab riders. We had Joe Neeson winning the Master 4 road race gold, which was a really great ride. We had Leslie Mowat, who was very powerful, winning the Master 6 women. A good time, 1:56.24. So just beat Joe in the sprint or something like that if they're on the road at the same time. It's good. Really powerful female riders. We had me, first place in the Master 2. We had Brendan managed to beat Dave Rollins in the Master 3 men, which had their two of the biggest riders, and interestingly, they're so evenly matched at the moment. They spent around about the last 2 kilometres, I'm not joking, doing what amounted to a track sprint where you're going very slowly and watching over your shoulder, waiting for the other person to make a move. This went on, and apparently Brendan just edging Dave by half a wheel in the sprint, so congrats guys. Jason McCarty pulling in a solid bronze too. Good for you, go mountain bike. We had Rob Kilvington winning the Master 4. Kieran Allwood doing well there. Chris Sutherland doing well on Master 4. John Curran not doing so well. I have to have a look at his data. Not such a good day for old John. Good rider though. Brent Copeland winning Master 5. Very good rider. Stephen Artu O'Keefe picking up the bronze in Master 5. Really good ride. Steve Orchard doing good ride in Master 5. Big field. We had Glenn Owen winning Master 6. We had Andrew Linton, Master 7. John Lowe, Master 8. Josh Page. Now I think he won the sprint, or may have even gone away slightly by himself, I should say, in the big group I was referring to earlier, made up of Master 2 and Senior and Under 23 and Junior and all that. And Barry did win the sprint, but he was actually second, but he won the gold for the group, for the age, because he is a centre member. Anthony Nalder having a great ride, coming in third, very aggressive and very strong. Anyone else we got in there of note? Lots of riders doing well. Toby Fuller winning and riding really well in the Under 23. So, time trial. I'll just pull out a couple of names here who did well. Leslie, again Leslie Mount winning gold in the Women Master 6. And in 25k events. Actually, look at this. So I had the third fastest time on the day. The guy with the fastest time was Marty Hartley Brown, who's an under 19, very strong rider. Second fastest time was a guy called Ben Earnshaw. I don't know much about him, with 33.37, about 30 seconds behind Marty. My time was, what did I say? 35.54. So I was actually 2 minutes slower. So those guys, neck and shoulders above all the rest of us. So I won the gold in Master 2. Mike Proudfoot won the gold in Master 3. Really good ride. But good rides all around, guys. Mike Stewart, complete savage, lost a lot of weight. He's really worked on his power, picking up the gold in Master 4. That was an excellent ride. Steve Orchard picking up the gold. Another FitLab rider, Master 5. So good times, guys. Thank you very much to Athletes Club Masterton for hosting. There were sandwiches in the Carcass Cave following the road race. There were no sandwiches for the time trial, which I was wildly disappointed about. But apart from the sandwichless time trial, congrats to Athletes Club Masterton. Mike Sim from Cycling New Zealand coming along to help with various commissaire duties, and the weather cooperated. It is all good. So let's quickly, so I know I've gone on, talk about next weekend, but it's simple really, because PNP4 and Wellington Masters Cycling Club champs, Saturday and Sunday respectively, well, same roads pretty much. If you're riding the PNP race and you're doing the Grand Fondo, 2 laps, it's going to be quite long, 100 k's or so. The only thing I'd say about this course is it's going around the steep side of Millers. So the main feature in this actually is the course is, okay, just get this, it's pretty lumpy, sorry, up to about 35 k's, it's when you hit the steep side of Millers. And it is, you know, people underestimate this climb all the time. It's not long, it's medium grade, it gets a little bit steep in places. There's really a good chance of selections being made there, because after that, it's almost like a combination of the climb and the terrain afterwards being super fast. So if you come off the wheel and you've got 5 motivated guys, they can put the hammer down on that second half of the course and really open things up. So it's a danger spot, not just the climb, but that whole section. It's 2 laps of that. So the guys who are going to do well there, same guys as always. I think Ben Barry is probably coming into some form, and he could be a bit of a dark horse for this race. He's giving guys like Brendan and Dave Rollins a run for their money. And Anthony Norder too will be good on this course. The Masters Club, a little bit longer race. It is that circuit plus the Millers circuit. It's exactly the same course by the looks as what I was talking about in the road race, the Centre Champs from Saturday. So not much more to say about it, the only feature really being the not steep side of Millers. What's going to happen in this race? This is kind of like, for some reason, got a bit of a reputation as a breakaway-ish course, especially on Millers circuit. I've broken away there. You know, like there was the breakaway on the weekend. Tons of breakaways go here, and you wouldn't really think it from the terrain necessarily. The part which is between the turn off from Longbush Road, you turn left, and you come up past the sports complex. There's some little rollers there, and I wouldn't mind betting that if the wind is a northerly, you can get a great push all the way down from the northern tip corner of this course down to the start finish. And that could be the hot tip, you know, try your luck there, because that last third of the race could go super duper quick if the wind is right. If it's not, you know, you might be a little bit more conservative. So that's all I'd say about that. So I will try to convince my wife that I can ride both. She may actually want a weekend day where I'm not racing my bike all the time, and she can go and do something she would like to do instead of looking after children all weekend. And that, chaps, I cannot fault. Maybe if it's take home about that, it is, don't piss your wife off too much. That's what I'd say. So, as always, if you'd like a coaching plan from me, you can email me, steve@fitlab.co.nz, or you can go to fitlab.co.nz As always, this is brought to you by FitLab, Tailwind Nutrition, Biomaxa Capital Suckers. I'll see you on the weekend.